Good evening, I'm John Dickerson.
I'm Maurice Dubois.
It appears tonight that we may be heading to an end of the Gaza war, now in its third year. But despite the celebrations you saw in Hostage Square at the top of the broadcast, there is still a long way to go with potential obstacles along the way.
Still, Israel and Hamas have taken the first big step. They signed an agreement today for a ceasefire and an exchange of Israeli hostages for Palestinian prisoners.
President Trump, whose peace plan this is, said today the exchange will happen early next week, and he will be there. He is also sending about 200 U.S. troops to Israel.
And Israeli forces are soon to begin a partial withdrawal from Gaza. Debora Patta in East Jerusalem has been covering the war since it began. She reports now on what could be the beginning of the end. Deborah?
A very good evening. Well, the Israeli government has now approved that deal, which means a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas will come into effect within the next 24 hours. Then the remaining 48 hostages, living and dead, can be exchanged for 250 Palestinian prisoners serving life sentences and 1,700 more who've been arrested since October 2023.
For 734 days, this is where hope was kept alive.
We've been here many times in the past 2 years. We've seen rage, despair, hopes raised and dashed. But today feels very different.
Gone were the placards and angry chants, replaced by celebrations of joy.
Such a happy moment for all Israelis and for all the Middle East.
48 hostages remain in captivity, 20 believed to be alive. Rotem Cooper's father, Amiram, is one of many that did not make it out. His body is still in Gaza. Cooper says Hamas might have killed him, but it was the Israeli government that failed him.
It feels like this day happened not because of, but despite of the Israeli Prime Minister and Hamas, and more because of President Trump.
Israeli troops will now need to withdraw to an agreed line within Gaza, and the bombing must stop. That's when the 72-hour clock begins for Hamas to release the remaining hostages. In Gaza, the ceasefire was greeted with jubilation. The past 734 days have been an endless stream of loss, displacement and war. And it is the first responders who have had to risk their lives day in and day out. The feeling is indescribable, said Noor al-Shakhnoubi. Thank God the war has ended and we are alive. Inshra Ahmed had already started imagining her future once again. I'm so happy the war is over, she said. I hope I can return to my normal life, my school and my home.
Now, we should note that the ceasefire is not yet in place and the bombing has not stopped. Just tonight, at least 6 people were killed and 40 missing following an Israeli strike on a home in Gaza City.
Deborah, after the hostages are released, what are some of the possible sticking points that could derail the next part of this plan?
Well, John, there's several, and they're not easy ones to resolve. It is unclear if Hamas has agreed to lay down all its weapons. That's a key Israeli demand. The future governance of Gaza could also be a sticking point for Hamas. President Trump's plan calls for an interim governing body with himself as chairman. That ultimately would be handed over to the Palestinian Authority. Hamas has said nothing on this, and Prime Minister Netanyahu also pushed back recently, just last week, in fact. Then there are the right-wing hardliners in his ruling coalition who want to annex Gaza. The deal puts that off the table, but they hold a lot of power and have already threatened to collapse Netanyahu's government.
Debora Patta in East Jerusalem, thank you.
The Speaker of the Knesset today invited President Trump to address the Israeli parliament, lighted tonight in red, white and blue.
If the peace plan succeeds, history will record it as one of the greatest foreign policy achievements of his presidency. Nancy Cordes at the White House has more about how the plan came to be.
What do you guys have to say to President Trump?
Thank you.
Some hostage families got the good news in a joyous phone call with the commander-in-chief.
The hostages will come back. They're all coming back on Monday.
At the White House today, President Trump said he plans to travel to Egypt and Israel for the release of the hostages.
They're dancing in the streets of many, many countries right now. It's amazing.
After months of talks, White House officials say 2 recent turning points put pressure on Hamas to accept Trump's 20-point deal. The first was last month's surprise Israeli strike on Hamas targets inside Qatar, a strong U.S. ally.
So this is going to be a very important meeting.
Then at the United Nations, Trump met with the leaders of Muslim-majority nations from around the world to build support for his plan.
The president had some extraordinary phone calls and meetings that required a high degree of intensity and commitment and made this happen.
Israel and Hamas have agreed on a multi-phase plan before.
Phase 1 will last 6 weeks.
In the closing days of the Biden administration.
It includes a full and complete ceasefire.
But that plan fell apart in March after Israel and Hamas clashed over terms for a permanent end to the war. 7 months since have seen some of the war's fiercest fighting.
People want to see this work. It's going to work. It's absolutely going to work.
Here's what we're learning this evening about the role that the U.S. military is going to play in stabilizing Gaza now. About 200 U.S. service members are going to work out of a new coordination center in Israel, and they'll be there to monitor the ceasefire, make sure it's being implemented properly, and to help facilitate the flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza.